We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's September 27th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Chuseok.
Happy Wednesday, everyone!
Happy Wednesday!
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. For the first time in 7 years, South Korea's health ministry has decided to freeze its state health insurance premiums for the following year. This comes as the insurance program had relatively stable finances. Also, officials aim to ease the public's financial burden amid high inflation and interest rates. There were two other times South Korea froze the premium. They were back in 2017 and 2009. By law, South Koreans are required to join the health insurance scheme. And from tomorrow, the whole nation will take a breather from its busy schedule with the 6-day Chuseok holiday. Even the weather is expected to clear up from tonight, allowing people to look up at the clear skies and see the full moon throughout the holidays. Chuseok falls on the 15th day of the 8th month according to the lunar calendar, which is also when you can see the largest full moon of the year. Lastly, though the holidays are a time to gather with your family and relatives, Statistics Korea recently found out that senior citizens aged 65 and up prefer living alone. 8 out of 10 of them said they do not want to live with their children. Instead, most said they were preparing or saving up to enjoy leisure time or go on vacation alone. As of this year, seniors aged 65 and up constitute 18.4% of the whole population. By the year 2050, this number will go up to 40%. And in the same survey, most seniors said they were earning their own money. And compared to unemployed seniors, those with a job said they felt much happier and less stressed out. Also, when asked, then who should take care of them? The seniors, instead of one's own child, more than half of respondents pointed to the government and society. Now I'd like to ask our panelists here in the studio, where do you guys stand on this issue?
Well, I absolutely agree that the government and society should be the ones taking care of all the seniors instead of the children, because we're facing a rapidly aging society, country, and if we rely too much on our children, they will get all the burden, and we really need that social structure and the system to support the parents, the seniors. And we've actually dealt with this issue in one of our previous episodes before. And our conclusion then was also the government's support and right social security and system for these people. And I also think it's really important that seniors, they have their work even after retirement and after the retirement age, because according to research and numerous studies, people who still engage in work, they really tend to be healthier, both physically and mentally.
And I think that's the way the government and society can take care of seniors, is by providing more job opportunities for them. Because as you mentioned, and as the same survey said, those with a job seemed much happier and healthier. What about you, Cheska? Where do you stand on this?
Oh, I absolutely agree with what Jihi said, and I have my own personal experience as well, because my grandfather, who is over the age, I'm sure, of 85, he's still working. Like, he bikes to his workplace every morning, like spot on at 6 a.m. and leaves at 5. He gets up earlier than I do.
That's amazing. Every single day at 6
Every
a.m.
single day. Like, even on like national holidays, he's the kind of guy that would just go to work because he wants to, you know, have his own space, feel refreshed, you know.
Feel alive.
And that's what gets him up in the morning.
Exactly. So, I mean, just speaking for myself, I mean, even when I age, I would still like to be working. Like, I would like to entertain my younger generation, you know, people, not be entertained just by them, so to speak. So I think this is a really important issue. And also, I really think it's up to the government to provide the kind of stability and the security for us, because we've devoted our youth to build the country as it is. So I think it's time that, you know, we get back from them.
And as of now, it only seems to be the plausible solution, given that South Korea does have one of the lowest birth rates in the world.
True.
Our youth population is declining, so it is really up to society and better welfare policies to better, you know, maintain this type of demographic change. And that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Let's now change gears to our main discussion topic of the day. Starting this this year, August 13th on the lunar calendar has been designated as a day to remember the families separated by the Korean War. This is just before the start of the annual Korean Thanksgiving holiday, Chuseok. That's why here on NewsGen, we're also going to dedicate today to see how the Korean War has affected and continues to affect families torn apart over 7 decades ago. Chuseok is a special time of the year in Korea. Falling on August 15th on the lunar calendar, it's one of the country's biggest traditional holidays where Koreans visit their hometowns and travel thousands of kilometers to meet their relatives. But there's some 40,000 people who can't do this. These are Koreans who got separated from their families during the Korean War, which lasted from 1950 to 1953. According to the Unification Ministry, only 43,624 people who applied to have family reunions with North Korea still were alive as of last year. Ever since inter-Korean relations froze up in 2018, separated family reunions haven't taken place. With the hope of reunification fading, these separated families are growing older and older, with less chance of enjoying what could be their last Chuseok holiday, embracing their loved ones. We're just ahead of the 6-day Chuseok holiday here in Korea, and while most of us will be able to go see our relatives, there's still a handful of separated families from the Korean War that won't be able to enjoy such luxury. Let's first take a look at the history behind inter-Korean separated families by talking to you, Cheska.
You know how, Koreans say, May is the month for families? But for me, like September through December, exactly this time really makes me feel like it's a time for family because we have the Chuseok, the great Thanksgiving of South Korea, and then there's the Christmas that's coming up. So you really get to think about the importance of family and what it's like to have them around. So if we take a look at the screen, I would like to provide some very important insight into the realities of families that have been separated during the Korean War. So to give you some brief information, we currently have about 10 million divided families between North and Korea. And while there have been some sporadic discussion regarding the reunion, the first one finally took place in 2000 until 2018, 21 family reunions were organized. But in 2019, the dissolution of the Hanoi summit between North Korea and the United States sort of suspended the reunion for the last 5 years, and none has taken place since. So between this period, over 60,000 applicants have passed away. And now the remaining almost 70% of the surviving applicants are seniors over the age of 80. And this is such a heartbreaking statistic because I have my grandparents as well, and you just see them aging day by day. And to think about more than half of these applicants just grasping on that last straw to see their families without any hope or guarantee that reunions would ever happen again, it's just heartbreaking.
And I think it's really heartbreaking because we all know what separation feels like. It's not to the extent of we're separated with our families because of the war, but I think our generation can relate to this concept. And can you imagine you had to wait over 50 years to meet your family.
And not even guaranteed, right?
Not even guaranteed. And then only for 21 times meet your loved ones for a very temporary amount of time.
Yes, yeah.
And then be separated again.
Right, again.
Exactly. And now, due to politics and the geopolitical situation, you're not given that chance anymore. It's definitely a pressing issue that does affect many here in Korea. Would you like to elaborate, though, Chi, on how the family separated from the Korean War is affecting us?
Right. Well, like Cheska mentioned, and as you mentioned, Yoon, Chuseok is just around the corner, and usually these national holidays are meant for families to gather together, although they've been living separately, like within the country.
Right.
That's understandable. But on these holidays, for us, we're mostly able to gather together, talk about how life has been like. You can miss them, but you can also see them.
Right.
But for these separated families, for years, for decades, they haven't been hearing from their family or seeing them. And so, like you said, about 70% are now older people, or seniors, and many are passing away as well. So the government even hold funerals for these separated family members, as you see on the screen. And so, I mean, separation and the issue of separated families between North and South Koreans, it's something we can only imagine, and it's really hard to describe how it feels like for all these people.
For sure, and considering the fact that it's not separating from like the United States and Korea, we're talking about a reclusive regime, Pyongyang, right? There's no internet, there's no way we can talk to each other, and that's why it's making it so difficult. I think the concept, it does hit us hard, and that's why this year the South Korean government did designate a day just for war-torn families. Though most of the remaining separated family members are now seniors aged 80 and up, I think youngsters like us can still relate. Even young people abroad can relate to this concept as well, because the concept of family and being separated does not have boundaries, right?
Absolutely. It's a very universal concept, and we know what it's like to have a family and not to have a family, right? And you just mentioned there are some families that are separated voluntarily because of job opportunities, education, like even visa problems. But there are families that are torn because of war currently happening in Ukraine, discrimination, seeking refuge and asylum in other countries. I actually volunteered at a refugee camp in the US, and hear this, two families, like same family, had to wait over 10 years
10 years.
for the members to reunite because there was a process that was going on, and some families get approved and some family member doesn't. And I heard from my grandparents' generation about some of these harrowing and perilous stories about like North Koreans crossing the border with their infant child, jumping on this minefield, not knowing when they will be gunned down if they ever get spotted. So when you hear these kind of things, even though you never had to live through it, you just get this like a heart-wrenching feel, a heart-throbbing like feeling of what it's like to have families separated and having to risk your life to reunite.
Right, if you're a human being, I think you can empathize with those emotions. And also, you mentioned currently we're seeing the Ukrainian war, which is why we're seeing refugees even to this day, not even only in Ukraine, but in other parts of the world. So many separated families are out there. Chihi, would you like to elaborate on what pops on your head when you think about the concept of separated families?
So as a millennial myself, I can really imagine the pain of the separation. And just now, when Cheska mentioned, imagine being separated from your family for 10 years, I just imagined in that moment, and it made me so sad, and I had that heartache, really.
Yeah, even for minutes.
Yeah, even for minutes. But if you're really in that situation, oh my gosh, I really can't imagine how sad it would be. But then I feel like the whole issue of separated families, the awareness isn't very high among millennials because it's only covered in the media. And like you said, most people are now in their 80s. So the concept of families itself, the separated families itself, is disappearing from the country as well. So some millennials and Gen Z believe that active inter-Korean unions should also be held apart from the dealing with separated families only on itself, and it should be really separated from political and economic issues as well, and have reunions organized as well as part of sisterhood rather than just the union of separated families.
Exactly, and that leads me to my last question I have for you guys in this part of our discussion. I think our generation has a tendency to often look at North Korean issues in two different ways, right? One way is the humanitarian issues, and that includes the separated families, but there's also a political part. We have to think about the diplomacy, the relations we're having with our allies and stuff like that. But do you think that once we're talking about inter-Korean, the Korean War separated families, does this affect our way of hoping for reunification or better relations with North Korea?
I think that's a really, really great question. And I actually did a little bit of research on this. And, some recent stats have actually shown that our generation and younger generation have a very divided opinion about the reunification itself because of the economic issues and the political polarization that we have. But when it comes to family issues like the inter-Korean families, our generation is known for really, vouching for human rights. So I think a lot of our generation do have a very united stance and strong opinion when it comes to issues such as this, and saying that we should find ways to connect separated families, whether it be to interact, communicate, or have any kind of exchanges. I mean, come on, we live in such a hyper-connected world. Can't we schedule a Zoom call or just have any access so that they can at least know that somewhere out there, their family members and loved ones are still alive? But that's probably just me with hopeful.
I mean, it could work if Pyongyang would allow a free and open internet, but in order for that to happen, we need to see more diplomatic breakthroughs come forth. So it is a complicated issue, right? And as I mentioned before, though today is all about remembering the legacy of the Korean War and the pain we're enduring till this this day, people abroad can still empathize with the concept of separated families. That's why we asked our viewers to imagine if they were ever torn from their family members because of war, and then share how they would feel. So here's what 3 of them had to share with us. Numinous said, "It's tragic, and I pray for all those suffering in the world, for those families separated." Pongsom78 said, "The thought of being apart from them, knowing they're in a different part of the region, would be agonizing. Family is such a vital and irreplaceable part of our lives, and the idea of not being able to be with them would be incredibly distressing." SGR said, "If any Korean siblings were separated by the DMZ being established in 1953, then their millennial or Gen Z descendants would be 2 or 3 generations removed, so many Koreans may have second or third cousins living in the north." That's another great point that we should be thinking about. It doesn't only affect seniors aged 80 and up, it could be our cousins out there in the north.
Absolutely. That's a really good point.
And we're going to include an actual North Korean defector who is separated from her family. Let's include her in our talks right after this. We're now going to talk to Park Eun-hee, a North Korean defector and human rights advocate. Eun-hee has talked to us a few times about North Korea-related issues on our show, so it's great to have you back on our show, Eun-hee.
Good to be back.
All right, Eun-hee, so the Chuseok holidays will kick off from tomorrow here in Korea, and I can only imagine how much you miss your family at this time of the year. As of now, which of your family members are still in North Korea?
All of my immediate family members are still in North Korea, and I miss them greatly, especially during this the holiday of Chuseok.
You know, because we're in South Korea, we were able to talk about the South Korean families really missing their family in the north. But we would love to hear what it's like for families in the north during holidays like Chuseok. Do families in North Korea also miss the separated relatives in the south as well? Like, what do you think about them?
Absolutely. During the Chuseok holidays, we gather together by sharing happiness and sorrows and personal stories that can make other family members laugh so hardly. And also we do go to greet for the ancestors together and see other family members as well nearby. But the pain of separation is not unique to South Koreans. In the north, many families have also been torn apart due to defections to China and South Korea. It's heart-wrenching to think about the families on both sides who daily miss each other during the holidays, especially for North Korean defectors living in South Korea.
Right. So, Eun-hee, you mentioned around this time of the year, you miss not only you, but other North Korean defectors miss their families a lot, and they get together to spend the time together. Are there any specific reunions or events, gatherings that you have engaged in or are planning to engage in during this holiday?
There are no specific events to celebrate Chuseok for North Korean defectors in South Korea. In the first few years after my defection, I deeply despised the Chuseok, the longest holiday of the year. For me, Chuseok marked a day of profound loneliness and sadness as I had arrived in South Korea entirely alone. I often found myself envious of friends who could visit their parents in their hometowns. My Chuseok days were often filled with the sorrow and longing, wishing I could be with my family. Thankfully, I now have friends from colleagues and acquaintances I met while living abroad, with whom I can make video calls to alleviate some of the loneliness. However, no one certainly can truly replace the yearning I feel for my family, which intensifies during the lengthy Chuseok holiday.
And I completely agree with you, and I can only empathize with how much pain you're going through. But in light of the holidays, very briefly, Eun-hee, anything you'd like to say to war-torn or separated families out there, or even to your own family members?
First of all, to all the war-torn and separated families out there, I want to convey my deep empathy. The pain of separation is something I understand very deeply. I hope that one day, through peace and reconciliation, families can be reunited. And to my family, I hold on to the hope of reuniting with you one day, as my love for you is immeasurable. I am determined to persist in the fight for those who are trapped under the oppressor forces and cannot voice their plight. This resolve will continue until the day I am reunited with my cherished family, sisters, and brothers in North Korea. That's what I want to say.
And let's hope in the future, Chuseok, you are able to spend time
Yes.
with your reunited family. Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And here in the studio, as a final note, any words you would like to share to separated families out there?
You know, I'm still trying to get over what
Yeah.
Amy said, because she was saying that there is nothing that can fill the void or replace what it's like to not have families around, whether you have friends or you have people around you. And, you know, I have grandparents, and having lived around the world, I also had times when I was separated with my families. So I had a glimpse of what it was like to even then feel like what it's like to not have them around. So it truly breaks my heart. And as Yeon, you mentioned, you know, I understand the political gravity and the complication and the polarization that we face. But I really, really hope that we can find a way to overcome that, to see what's really important. Because let's face it, you can't have a country without the people.
Yeah.
And people deserve to be with their families. no
That's
matter what.
exactly what I would like to emphasize as well. Politics is politics, but in the center, humanitarian issues. It's all about the human story there. I completely agree. Any final note?
I absolutely agree with you as well. And because most of the seniors, most of the family members are now in their senior years, over 80, I really hope that during the fewer days of lives they have left, they really get to see their families. And it really saddens me that I can't really do anything myself to help them see their families. Yeah.
But hopefully, Chihi, we are seeing a lot of human rights organizations and governments from around the world trying to bring back war-torn families together. So let's keep our eyes on how the two Koreas will work towards peace and reconciliation. Hopefully, within the next upcoming Chuseok holidays, the plight of these divided families will be resolved.
Wouldn't that be so amazing? Like, we would be reporting next year on
I know.
Chuseok on the reunited event, saying
It'd be
this
a grand festivity.
I know, this is our 22nd reunion happening right now, live from News Generation.
Fingers for that.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Like, let's hope for that.
We're really hoping for
Let's wish that on the full moon this time.
Yes, during this Chuseok, let's all wish for that.
Yes.
But until then, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Cheska Reinhardt
This is always mine. Thank you.
and Chiji.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for watching. Enjoy your Chuseok, and we'll come again next week. We are
News Generation.